teach, we will create a safe and welcoming place for students and community. And that sounds all very nice, and you can make a nice poster out of it and a PowerPoint slide, but at some point, what do you do with that? I mean, we still have to create a school and a building and meet a budget, and so we started to think about, if vision was going to drive everything, is it really driving everything? What's vision's position in the design process? So in other words, we had to take that vision and what we called mediate it, put some meat on its bones. We were ultimately going to have to develop it. We're going to have to build documents people bid on, and ultimately we're going to give a building to the owner that they were going to have to operate. But what we wanted is that in every step of the wheel, including operation, it would come back to, how does this help realize that vision? So here's what we did. For better or worse, and this, remember I said it wasn't going to be clean and neat, so for better or worse, we began to unpack these visions, and I'll give you some examples of those. So here again is our little graphic. Once again, the black object in the middle is the existing MacArthur School, Vestal Parkway, the elevated highway, the river to the top, community to the bottom, and the little gray one, that's Vestal Avenue. It's a lovely site within a community park, and this was, by the way, the heart of this neighborhood and community. It had a lot to it. So we looked at this. We respect the energy of the site. Kelvin and I are architects. We, of course, think of the best answer, which is how much sunlight, how much geothermal energy, this and that. So when you open that tent up, it's like, no. What the energy is for a lot of people is that had a place. That was part of the community. There was memory of events that happened on a regular basis, events that happened on an annual basis, of the sign that communicated to the community, memorials, materials, playgrounds, gyms, and all those things. And we're trying, as we unpack these things, we're trying to hold off on what it means and how to solve it, and just kind of let it seep in. Healing our relationship with the river. The river here in Binghamton, as is a lot of cities, was evil. They've walled it off, they've tried to keep it away, they've tried to protect it from it. So we started to say, how could we understand the hydrology of the site? The water that's coming from the neighborhoods to the river and what it does on our site, what could we do with that? Could we start to bench it? Could people learn from that? Could we purify it? Could we teach people that the river is a living thing? Could you help to heal the relationship by understanding the river is alive, and that in how you develop this site, it was perfectly natural for the river to come into your site from time to time and the river to leave your site from time to time? Or do you leave it where it was, where the river's okay, I don't see it, or it destroys my neighborhood? And that's kind of where we were. I think this is probably the least visionary of the visions, honestly. We create a net zero fossil fuel building. It's kind of the most specific, but there's aspects to teach, right? What do you first have to understand? Where's the sun come in the winter? Where's the sun in the summer? Where's the prevailing winds? And so now you understand that good. How does that inform you? Well, for us, it started to inform us, where do we put stuff? So we put all of our classrooms facing north. We have plenty of heat in those classrooms from little bodies. And we started to use that to drive daylight design. It also set up well for PV installations. The things to the south, closer to the neighborhood, were big stuff. Gyms, cafeterias, media centers that we could use the southern exposure for. We started to look at concepts, and Kelvin will get into this, of control and variability, and how does that allow us to qualitatively address comfort and quantitatively address an energy budget. We will teach. I'm going to roll back around to the giant newsprint on this because it's kind of fun. But we learned some stuff just from the context. Kind of far side is the neighborhood, that's existing MacArthur and the river. How do those inform the size and scale of things? How do they inform materiality from the neighborhood? The memory of MacArthur, this bluestone that was so critical to, that we heard, that was important there, the flowers. And then what about the river? Something that's random, something that's always changing. How do you take those things and bring them back around into architecture? Well, one way, the building is clad a lot it's basically clad in black locust, which is an ironwood, and bluestone, which is pretty local. And on the river side of it, we have these fantastic artists of stonemasons that laid up this stone in a random way that would relate to the river. Here's what the kids started to teach us is what's a classroom about. Now, this is one of the representative drawings. If you look in the big square, are little squares in the corner that say classroom. So what the kids said to us is classrooms are important. We need classrooms. We know it's where our work is. But they also told us that learning for them is occurring in all these other spaces. Not to mention some of them wanted like a Ruby Tuesdays and there were all kinds of great stuff. Teacher going crazy room and things like that.
Bad kids go to the office.
Bad kids go to the office, exactly. And what it started to generate though is thinking about that. The kids taught us learning's taking place everywhere all the time. We started to morph that into stealing Starbucks' concept of third space, right? You have home, you have work, in this case classrooms, and the places in between. And that started to spur the faculty to say, what could we do? How do we engage education in every place all the time in this different stuff? We'll create a safe and welcoming environment for the students. The old MacArthur sat in a bowl. I've worked at that district for 15 years. I've gone to MacArthur hundreds of times. I never knew where the river was. I have a bad sense of direction. You're down in a bowl. You have no idea. All you see is the elevated highway. So we started looking at things like prospect and refuge. If you're in a place in which you feel safe and you can see what's going on, it gives you a sense of safety. So, how do we bring this to design? Well, we did it with what we called the stack. So we started to analyze those things I talked to you about as we started mediating the vision. We started analyzing what some might call the flows of the site, and we just started piling them one on top of another to see what that would do, to see if we could still maintain, and believe me, we do have a program and a budget, but we're trying to maintain this sort of coexistence of quantitative and qualitative to form a building. So here's how it goes, and I'll hit it pretty quick. This line is in the middle of the site. Towards me is the high ground that did not flood. Towards Kelvin and Suzanne is towards the river. That flooded a lot. And we're towards the neighborhood heading my way. So we took those bigger chunks that we wanted on the site, stuff we could scale to the neighborhood. We put it that way and sat it on the high ground. The stuff we wanted facing north, the classrooms were small. We could put them above the floodplain and put them up on stilts. So starting to drive basic stuff. Then we thought about, wait a minute, what about the hydrology? How are we going to treat water? What are we going to do with it? How is that going to start to influence indigenous plantings on the site so that we could not just show people what water does, but could we purify it? Could we absorb it? Could we not release any other water back into the system? And could we do it with indigenous plantings that could also do a number of things, including engage the community and engage the students? And so there used to be a track that got wiped out. That's where people would teach their kids how to ride their bike. Nurses would walk there after shift. And so we wove it all the way through all those things. So people could see it, they could live it, they could experience it. And so the building started to look like this blobby diagram with the red stuff, the big stuff, the classrooms, and then the third space kind of in between. And then we started to layer on how does the public and the students get to the site. How does the neighborhood influence materials, the river influence the materials? And basically, at that point, we came up with this. So you can imagine how delighted the school board was when I presented this to them and said, you're paying us a shitload of money, pardon my French, and here's what I got for you. But I think the takeaway from this is that if you layer those flows, at least to us, and to the school board and the community, by the way, this building is not your grandmother's school. Nobody thinks it's weird. Everybody thinks like this is what should be. This is what all the influencers said of the building. And so, it's kind of an emergence thing. We didn't invent these terms, they exist, right? So the emergence of design by looking at the quantitative and the qualitative. And so this diagram became this floor plan, right? So this stuff up here is towards the neighborhood, gyms, cafeterias, media centers. 3 classroom wings floating up above the floodplain, facing north, taking advantage of daylight and solar orientation. And this well-articulated stack diagram became a real site plan, right? With all kinds of stormwater management, and plus, you still have to park cars and all that. So, in a nutshell, That's how we chose to investigate, explore, expose, and incorporate qualitative and quantitative aspects.
Some images you want to
Oh,
show?
that's right. You threw these in. So and this is kind of what it looks like now. You know, it's primarily clad in black locust. You can see the 3 wings. Almost all the solar panels are on in this photo. River's over there, the parkway, and yeah, it can speak for itself. I'm not going to hype the design. That's kind of childish, but it's turned into a wonderful thing. And so I want you to talk now, John.
Sure. So